How do you swap from working in IT to becoming a web developer? It's something I've personally done, and I'm hoping to share my story of how I achieved it as well as why. My name's Adrian, and I'm a designer and a developer. I build websites and apps, so if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe because it lets me know what kind of content you guys want. So, my story is that I originally went into IT, it was my own choice. I was looking as a young student at what my career opportunities were, and at the time, it looked like IT was it. It was sort of where I wanted to work in because I like technology, and I went to university to do a bachelor's in IT. At the time, I still wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I did do a little bit of website stuff because I did enjoy that, but at the same time, I also enjoyed working with technology. So I got my first couple of jobs, and I found that while the work was enjoyable, I did get to work with the latest technology and whatnot. It was grueling work. If you know about working in IT, it's usually working with people that have problems and issues that you need to fix. You need to cheer them up. You need to make them feel better, even if you don't solve their problem. And that itself is a difficult task. I had friends of mine that were web developers, and when I saw them, they seemed really happy. When I asked them why they were feeling so well, they said that they had just worked really hard and delivered a great website for a business. And that business was so happy that they just bought them extra coffees, extra little gifts, and they essentially made my colleague feel happier. It was the opposite of what I was doing, where I was trying to make my clients feel happier when they had issues. I like the sound of that. But at the same time, I thought maybe this isn't the right career for me. I, at the time, was still working in consulting, and it seemed like IT was it. I didn't even consider about swapping roles. Just the bare thought of swapping careers can be very scary to people. When I finally got my second job, I leveled up, which also means that I was working with more difficult applications and systems. It also meant that if I made a mistake, then I could bring down an entire system, such as the email or the file server, and that sort of risk actually is quite stressful to have on your back. It means that you have to double check every bit of work that you do. At the same time, my friends who were developers were throwing up designs and development all over the place, and it didn't really matter if there was an issue with a div. Half the time Chrome corrected it, or they could just fix it without any stress. And personally, I was seeing more and more appeal in being a web developer. But at the time, I still wasn't sure at how I could do this. I didn't have the skills yet, and I also didn't have the knowledge. Also, I had worked in the IT field for so long now. It felt like I had leveled up and my salary had increased. So if I was going to swap careers, then I would have to start off at the bottom again. I'd be working with juniors, and really the job market would be looking at me and going, hey, this guy's been an IT developer for so long, why is he a web developer now? They would pick other people over me. I didn't have a design course or a programming course. My background, my career, my studies were all in IT. And how on earth could I possibly move? I was already getting older, and when you start a job, you'd expect that to be when you're much younger. So all of these things sort of put me off considering the idea again. And then I also got married. I also had a kid, a house, a mortgage. Imagine doing that. All these responsibilities, and you want to swap careers and start at the bottom again? It's inconceivable, and it's scary. And I did it. So how did I do it? How did I make the swap from working IT to being a web developer? Well, there were two parts to it. The first was the actual decision to do it. Not just thinking about doing it, but actually doing it. And that came in two parts. The first part was the fact that I was fed up with working in IT. I just didn't enjoy it anymore. The second was that I really enjoyed the idea of being a developer. When I combined these two and I talked to people like my wife and my friends, then I was able to make that decision to actively decide to swap. Now that's half the battle. The other half was obviously I needed to learn and understand programming and design, and otherwise without those, I wouldn't actually be able to get a job. The skills to become a developer or a designer don't happen overnight, And during the time that I was debating whether I wanted to become a developer, I was building those skills up. I was going onto YouTube or on Google and doing courses, learning about how to code HTML, learning about CSS. I might have only put in 1 hour a day, or maybe a couple of hours on the weekend. But over the next 5 years, while I was in IT, that adds up. I had at least 5 to 10,000 hours of actual learning behind me. And when I started applying that into real world practice for projects and hobbies that I wanted to start up with before I swapped careers, then I found I was doing very well. I think that's the advice I have to you. If you're considering to move into a development role or a design role, just start playing around with different hobbies or ideas you might have and start doing some of those courses online, because they really help build that foundation so that when you finally do make the decision to swap, you've already learned most of the things you need to in order to be able to do that. So what I did was I decided to give myself the task to build an online business within a year. And this was while I was still working in IT. So I was still working every day during the day in IT, and I would come home at night and I would develop for 4 to 8 hours or until I just literally fell asleep on my keyboard. And that period where I was building an online business was the period where I learned the most about development. All these learnings essentially helped me get my first job after I had decided to make my switch. And I think that's one of the other tips I'll have for you. It's making sure that you have something you're really passionate about to work on. And for me, it was an online business which I personally had been considering making for a long time. By working on this business, I needed to research all the tools that I needed to be a developer and a designer. I learned how to use Photoshop, Visual Studio. I learned how to code PHP, MySQL, jQuery. Now that I had some skills under my belt, I started looking for little jobs to do. Just small real-world situations where a business or a friend needed something built up on the web. And by starting small and taking those baby steps, I got some real experience and some projects behind my portfolio. So when it eventually came time to swap to a different job and do interviews, my portfolio showed a full year of working on my own online business, as well as real-world projects I had built in my implementations for small clients and friends, and I had a good experience of the latest technologies. All of this made me an outstanding candidate for going to a new position, and I think that's the main goal there. Essentially building yourself up, your own skill set. I don't think it matters how old you are or how young. If you put in the time and the effort, you build that experience up and you do real projects, then you'll be able to get there and get a position as a web developer. Doesn't matter what your background is, whether it's IT or even if it's just a completely different thing like a mechanic or an engineer. I've even seen some of my mates who are actual doctors want to learn and start doing web development. There are so many opportunities in there. I think in every industry, there's probably a way that technology such as web development or apps can actually benefit the organization and save money. And I think a lot of people have ideas, but they just don't know how to implement them. Now I've been really happy. As a developer, I found my calling. This is what I enjoy doing most. I design and develop stuff every single day now, and I can do it all day and feel more energized even at midnight trying to create something for a client. It gets me up at night and it gets me up in the morning. So if you want to become a developer, I would say just start small. Learn how to do the baseline HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and there's heaps of tutorials online, both on YouTube and just generally on Google. When you learn the basics, then consider a project you want to do. Maybe it's a small hobby, or even if it's a to-do list. You can slowly build that up and build your skill sets. When you're more comfortable with that, I would recommend just doing a few projects for a couple of friends. They don't have to be paid, it's just something to know that you can make a promise to someone and deliver on that promise in terms of development. Eventually, if you keep learning and doing more, you'll get to a point where you'll feel ready. you'll be confident enough to show your portfolio to any prospective employers, and you'll be proud of it. You'll be able to talk about how you developed it and what you learned along the way. And that's what people like to see. And that way you can move to a new career and be confident that you'll be able to deliver on it as well. That's how I did it, and I hope this advice helps you guys out too. So, have you been considering a career swap? Has this video helped you understand a little bit more about how I move careers from IT to development? If you're thinking about it and have any questions, leave it in the comments below and I'll try to answer. Otherwise, I hope you guys like this content. If you did, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.